Aardman have made many endearing and captivating films with their stop-motion animation. But how did they get so swept up in Hollywood mudslinging, and what impact did this have on their films? In the 90s, Jeffrey Katzenberg, having overseen the Disney animation unit from films that have struggled to perform following Walt's death into the Renaissance and some of their all-time greatest movies, he felt like he deserved a promotion. And indeed, when the position of second-in-command opened up, Disney's CEO Michael Eisner offered the job to himself. This led to Katzenberg's resignation in 1994, who would go on to form Dreamworks later that year. And he was determined to outdo Disney. A bitter feud had been born. Like Dreamworks' first animated movie, Prince of Egypt, an idea that Eisner had personally refused to make, was set to release in November 1998. But Disney then scheduled Pixar's A Bug's Life for that exact same weekend. So Dreamworks had to postpone The Prince to December 1998 and instead rushed their own bug-themed movie Ants to October 1998, 1 month before A Bug's Life. And I thought I was petty. What went on at Disney had nothing to do with Pixar, and they were incredibly upset at this move, but Katzenberg was taking no prisoners. He helped seal the deal with Disney and Pixar in the first place, so under Dreamworks, he wanted his own Pixar, and set his sights on a small British studio in Bristol known for making things like this.
No crackers, Gromit. We've forgotten the crackers.
Aardman were very successful, not just with commercials and music videos, but animated shorts like Morph and eventually Wallace and Gromit, which would bag them 2 Oscars. They needed help to take them into feature films, and even Disney were interested. But Katzenberg had wanted Aardman ever since seeing Creature Comforts and scooped them up for a 5-movie deal, a move that mirrored Disney's initial 3-movie deal with Pixar.
Do we have a deal? And
so Aardman's first movie, Chicken Run, could finally take flight.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You've been a wonderful audience.
Inspired as a parody of The Great Escape, this was a major departure for animated movies at the time. Not because it was stop motion. Stop motion animation as feature films were relatively new, but not all that unusual at the time, such as big hits The Nightmare Before Christmas and James and the Giant Peach. What made Chicken Run stand out so differently was how British it was.
Poppycock!
what did you do, you great pudding?
I didn't do ow!
Was that English?
Despite the star power of, Mel Gibson, the LA Times published a glossary of British slang like Nelly podging and wazzock. Katzenberg defended the codswallop, saying, "Do you literally know what it means? No. Do you understand what it means? Yes." Not only have people never seen a movie that looks like this, they've never seen a movie that talks like this. But that's its charm. And it was a gamble. The Road to El Dorado had released that same year and underperformed at the box office, so all eyes were on this quirky plasticine movie with words that Americans wouldn't understand. And it worked.
What?
Chicken Run was, and remains to this day, the highest grossing stop-motion animated movie to date, even outdoing Nightmare Before Christmas and anything Laika has produced. Award-winning, universal acclaim from critics, and was even partially responsible for the creation of the Best Animated Movie category at the Oscars. Not bad for a chick flick. The creation of Chicken Run was a heavy toll on Aardman, as their first feature-length film involved everyone working continuously to optimistically make maybe like 6 seconds per week. Katzenberg would take regular flights to Bristol to check in on the progress.
Jeffrey was sort of like Mrs. Tweedy. He would come into the coop and open up one of the grooves and catch us all messing around.
During one of these visits, he would ask, "So, what's the next film?" Given that this one film alone took up everything, they hadn't had the chance to even think about what to do next. They were still a small studio. They couldn't make multiple movies at once like the animation powerhouses of Disney or Pixar. Aardman considered an idea based on The Tortoise and the Hare, but as the script wasn't coming together, they bailed on that and moved on to some old favourites. Now, say on one side you had chicken, and on the other side you had cheese. Which of these two would you say were my own personal preference? Place your bets while I tell you about this video's sponsor, Priorities. Courtesy of Clarendon Games, Priorities is a party game that's very simple to play. One player draws 5 random cards from totally random things and secretly ranks them in order of preference. The other players then have to work together to guess that player's preferences in order. It's very straightforward and a ton of fun. You learn a lot about your friends very quickly. Priorities is available now on Amazon. Links in the description. And if you guessed cheese, I actually prefer chicken. I know, I let myself down too. Okay, back to the video. Wallace and Gromit are unashamedly British, and the short films that sent up American movie tropes of Hitchcock thrillers and Hollywood action carried that homely sense of unique Aardman charm. The Wrong Trousers especially is a masterpiece, and the cheese-loving duo deserved a chance to charm the moviegoers too. But there was a problem. Shrek. Shrek happened.
Somebody.
Now they had the taste of the big money, Disney level of money. Chicken Run was the highest grossing Dreamworks animation movie until Shrek doubled it.
Hey, get off it!
And unfortunately for Wallace and Gromit, the Great Vegetable Plot, this resulted in a lot more studio meddling, such as the name.
They did a lot of marketing research and came back with, I'm afraid vegetables are a negative with kids.
So what we have here is a major culture clash. Here is a Hollywood mogul determined to outdo his competitors, and he wants his movies to be loud and brash because that's what works. And here was a man who really likes cheese.
I'm just crackers about cheese.
It was never going to work, but Katzenberg, a notorious micromanager, was going to try. First up was the British slang. Remember, but that's its charm? No, you don't. Boop, it's gone. Some lines of dialogue had to be re-recorded to be better understood by American audiences.
Sometimes in the conversation, you just got the idea that they just wish it was a bit less British.
There was a huge argument over the word marrow that Katzenberg insisted Americans wouldn't know.
How is that prize marrow of yours coming on?
So it was awkwardly redubbed to say,
How is that prize melon of yours coming on?
even though it's not a melon? There were reports of wanting to recast Peter Sallis, the original voice of Wallace, with someone more famous. That's unthinkable. Don't even think it.
Oh, thanks, Chuck.
It's unclear if this came from Katzenberg. It may have been just a general direction from Dreamworks that was ultimately, thankfully, ignored. Aardman co-founder Peter Lord, on the subject of how to talk to LA executives, said, "We listen and nod and then go do our own thing." It seems the decision to cast Hollywood stars like Helena Bonham Carter and Ralph Fiennes as principal cast members was a kind of compromise in order to keep Sallis. But even then, Katzenberg wanted younger, trendier actors instead, because that's what Shrek did. Why doesn't Wallace ever learn his lesson? Why doesn't Wallace drive a nicer car? Because it's British. We like things being a bit shit. Stop-motion animation itself is obviously not as smooth and clean as CG movies with fingerprints and indentations. The imperfections have that clear, tangible human touch. That's its charm, and I wouldn't change a thing about it.
Oh no, Wallace has fallen over.
And this revealed just how divided the two studios were culturally. Hollywood is a long way away from Bristol. In fairness, Katzenberg may have been a bit spooked by a string of box office failures, El Dorado, Spirit, and Sinbad, and the company was close to bankruptcy. He was competing against Disney. He couldn't fail so publicly, not so soon. I don't think Katzenberg was trying to completely remold Wallace and Gromit, just reshape them into a box office smash hit. It didn't work. Once again, critically acclaimed and award-winning, including the Oscar for Best Animated Feature, even beating Howl's Moving Castle. And despite earning $190 million on a budget of $30 million, Dreamworks suffered yet another loss. Following Sinbad, Dreamworks Animation moved away from traditional animation in favor of computer animation, which proved to be a successful formula for Shark Tale and Madagascar, continuing the Shrek tradition of popular actors, popular music, and pop culture references, as with the massively successful Shrek 2. Well, if Dreamworks wanted an Aardman version of Shrek, they got it, with Flushed Away. Whoa! Flushed Away is so off-brand for an Aardman movie, I struggle to even remember this was an Aardman movie. There's nothing wrong with the CG element of the film. Aardman have been using it for a long time, such as the floating CG bunnies in Curse of the Were-Rabbit, or the entire ending of the film where they had to edit out Wallace's bunny ears after rewrites. And there were efforts made in the CG to replicate the imperfections, like fingerprints. The characters were designed to stay true to Aardman, such as a lack of fur. The official reason given for making Flushed Away entirely CG was because the water scenes would obviously be exhausting to make with plasticine, and to superpose it on top of the stop motion would have been too difficult. But I do wonder if the constant pressure from Dreamworks may have helped inform that decision. After all, Aardman accomplished CG water 6 years later in Pirates in an Adventure with Scientists. Flushed Away has good parts, such as Ian McKellen's performance.
Huzzah! A man of quality!
But gone was that charm, the very thing that made Aardman Aardman. This was loud and brash, with screaming slugs and pop culture references crowbarred in.
Have you seen my dad?
This looked like Aardman, but it didn't feel like Aardman. It pandered to an audience who didn't turn up, as it underperformed yet again at the box office, and Dreamworks pulled the plug on their 5-movie deal. At the time, Aardman were developing a caveman-themed idea in collaboration with John Cleese, but when the deal with Aardman ended, Dreamworks kept the film rights to the caveman idea, and it became The Croods? Wait, The Croods was an Aardman movie? Huh. Okay. It would be a very Hollywood trope to say that Katzenberg was the villain and Aardman could now finally prosper, but by all accounts, the split was amicable. The two sides agreed that their production styles differed too much to each get what they wanted out of it. Nick Park felt a tide of relief to no longer be forced to cater his films for an American audience. Part of the reason they signed the deal with Dreamworks in the first place was to maintain creative control, but Katzenberg started to apply more and more pressure, which counterintuitively was met with diminishing returns. It may have not been a dream pairing, but unfortunately for Aardman, they've never been able to recapture the success they once had with Dreamworks. Arthur Christmas and Pirates performed modestly, but their own caveman movie, Early Man, was a box office bomb. It seems like even with the celebrity cast and the efforts to cater to a British audience with football, they couldn't recreate the charm they once had with Chicken Run. So their next movie is a sequel to Chicken Run. They recast Mel Gibson, but also Julia Swalala, but also Julia Swalala, fucking not Walala, Sawala. Fuck it, you know what? I'm gonna move on. They recast Mel Gibson, but also Julia Swalala. Like, come on, guys. But an unlikely success story was found in Shaun the Sheep. It started out as TV shorts before being adapted as a movie and uniquely has no dialogue. So not being able to rely on the pull power of celebrities, the film uses mild grunts and vocalizations along with the tricks of silent movies like visual gags to tell a story without dialogue. And it's wonderfully charming, which led to a sequel, TV specials, and despite being a spin-off from Wallace and Gromit, it has its own spin-off with Timmy Time, a spin-off of a spin-off. Aardman continued to be an independent studio, producing films long and short of incredible quality. Maybe they haven't recaptured the glory days like they once had with Dreamworks, but as long as they don't lose their charm, they'll continue to mold and shape childhoods like modeling clay. But what about Katzenberg? This story started with him, so how does it end? When forming Dreamworks, the plan was to create a multifaceted entertainment empire
that will continue to make movies well beyond me someday.
It did not. The live-action studio was sold to Viacom in 2005 and until 2016 released films through Disney. Awkward. But he stayed in charge of DreamWorks Animation until 2016 when it was sold to Universal, which continues to succeed without him thanks to a franchise with a lot of Boss Baby vibes. It's called Boss Baby. So whilst Katzenberg didn't succeed in outdoing Disney at their own game, he still kinda led the charge on a whole new wave of animated movies. Shrek, How to Train Your Dragon, Kung Fu Panda, and Megamind, and in doing so, he gave Disney something they never had before. Competition. And he did that with a little help from a small British studio who likes cheese. Just don't mention Quibi.
The bounce has gone from his bungee.
I'm trying out this text-to-speech software to give the special shout-outs to this month's patrons: Ashley Kinder, Drifter Wolf, Lyra Faye, Ashley Bird McCarthy, Vinny Vex, Rusty Robot, Sloan Schoolcraft, Moro Kissimmee, Setson Wade, Nathan Choinati, Ninja Squid 2000, Brett Halford, Joe Wood, Decker Dane, Louis Weston, Jake Pinkerton, Matthew Smith, Joel the Game Noodle Jennings, Lean Deeney, Mark Connor, Volta Fexter, and Clam Wontley. Whoa, this text-to-speech is so good, completely flawless. And if you would like to support me, then please consider doing so on Patreon.